How'd you like to meet Big Eddie? He's our guest today, and he's Sheldon Leonard. And I think I'd probably belabor the issue a little bit to say that his face is rather familiar to yours. I find it interesting, Mr. Leonard. I've always wanted to meet you, and the reason is that you are what I consider a brain who has been masquerading as a hood for most of your professional life, actually. And you really fool a lot of people.
Well, that's the result of a chain of circumstances that are not likely to be duplicated again. As a matter of fact, to digress for a moment, that's the basis on which the character of Big Eddie is built, because Big Eddie is that kind of a paradox. He's a mug, he was street tough, and he was brought up the hard way in tough areas, and somewhere along the line he decided that that wasn't the way to make it, because if you did score, like you knocked off a warehouse or something like that, and you made a $20,000 score, you spent 10 years in the slammer, this averaged out at $2,000 a year, and that's janitor's wages, you know, so he figured going legit was better. I came to somewhat the same conclusion as an individual myself many years ago. I was brought up in New York, in the Lower East Side of New York, and acquired there all the attributes of a Lower East Side kid, along with the talking out of the side of the mouth, that sort of stuff. But for reasons that are not pertinent to this conversation, I came to the conclusion that I needed an education and a familiarity with another lifestyle, and so I went through the various educational levels. I got my degree at Syracuse University and continued after that working at show business academically, as well as working behind the footlights in front of the cameras. That is to say, studying with such people as George Kaufman, the fabulous author of the 30s, and Mark Connolly, Fred Allen, Jack Benny, Bob
I read
Hope,
that you were a play reader for people like Kaufman and Connolly and George Abbott, and that as really contrary to all the roles that you played as a hoodie kind of a guy, you really were more of an intellectual than the kind of riffraff that you portrayed. For instance, in most of your movies, you probably wore more wide-brimmed fedora hats than anybody who ever played in Hollywood before, and looked well in them.
Still have a gallery of those old-time stills, yes. No, I resist the term intellectual. I can't explain why, or I could, but it would take more time than we have available. But I prefer to say that I choose to understand the underlying principles of whatever I'm doing, whether it's being an actor or being a director or being a producer. And the old-time, for example, the old-time comics were pure pragmatists. They did whatever they did because it worked. They did double takes, or they used handles, or said, "Seriously, folks," or whatever their style and mannerism was, simply because it worked. And now that didn't satisfy me for whatever reasons are inherent in my chemistry. I had to know why it worked and understand why it worked so that I could apply it next time. This became of value to me when I transferred my activities into television, because you didn't have a chance, as we used to have in a legitimate theater, to try it out in New Haven, let's say, or to bring it to Washington, D.C. and see if it worked there. You had to be able to make it work on the drawing board.
Well, when all those years of playing a menace, did that make it difficult for you to be accepted in Hollywood and the corporate circles as a creative man, as a producer? After all, you were instrumental in such big shows as the Andy Griffith Show and Gomer Pyle and Dick Van Dyke and I Spy. You were in there as a creative producer or executive producer, one of the key roles. Was it difficult to be accepted on that basis?
Not difficult to be accepted because of the area in which I chose to enter. I entered as a writer. I came into these areas by way of writing. Now, it isn't particularly difficult to get your stuff read, particularly if you're working in the middle of the colony, as I was. I began writing first for radio, and then transferred to television. Now, when you've had enough of your stuff read, then it becomes relatively easy to say to someone, I can do a better directing job on this than the guy who did my last script can. And you've moved into another area.
You make it sound so easy, but your moves were always touched with a Midas touch. You were putting one successful series after another on the air.
It's a matter of timing, Milton. I watch the kids out at the coast, at the Pacific coast, surf riders. And if you catch the wave right, you can ride it right up on the beach. And if you don't, you get dumped. And in my case, I benefited by the timing. I came along with television in its growing phase as it was beginning.
Understood it, apparently.
Well, like I said before, understanding what I was doing was part of my hang-up.
Do you know many Big Eddies, or have you known?
I am one. Yes, the composition of Big Eddie, as I said, he could have gone in either direction, as I could have. I could have gone from swiping hubcaps to knocking off warehouses or whatever. I could have gone in any direction. Circumstances steered me in another direction.
Do you like being the big success you are? Big home, swimming pool, friends, money?
I like not having to worry about money, yes. I like the approval that you get that comes along with the work I do. Yes, that's one of the most valuable bonuses that go with entertainment work is the approval, the warm bath of affection that you get whenever you are out in public.
Were you a worrier over your career growing up?
Never.
Never?
I never planned my career, never worried about it. I drifted with the tide.
You worked all the time?
Yes. See, I started in the Depression in the legitimate theater in New York. And I had a succession of shows which worked very well. As a matter of fact, the last time I was in Atlanta was with a stage show called Three Men and a Horse, and this was back in the 30s.
Yeah.
Back in the 30s, and I worked pretty steadily then.
Would you be good enough into our camera as we sign off in the language of Big Eddie, or one of Sheldon Leonard saying that who you are, and we'll be back with our show shortly, something like that?
I ain't quite sure who I am. I just know that I'd like you to keep watching whatever it is we do, whenever it is we do it with you. So just stick along with us, folks. And thank you.